Hey, what's good, y'all? I'm going to read Chapter 10 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It's called The Ruined Bludgery. Since the disastrous episode of the Pixies, Professor Lockhart had now brought live creatures to class. Instead, he read passages from his books to them and sometimes reenacted some of the more dramatic bits. He usually picked Harry to help him with these reconstructions. So far, Harry had been forced to play a simple Transylvanian villager whom Lockhart had cursed of a babbling curse, a yeti with a head cold, and a vampire who had been unable to eat anything except lettuce since Lockhart had dealt with him. Harry was hauled to the front of the class during their very next defense against the dark arts lesson, this time acting a werewolf. If he hadn't had a very good reason for keeping Lockhart in a good mood, he would have refused to do it. Nice loud howl, Harry. Exactly. And then, if you'll believe it, I pounced like this, slammed him to the floor. Thus, with one hand I managed to hold him down. With my other, I put my wand to his throat. I then screwed up my remaining strength and performed the immensely complex Homorphous charm. He let out a piteous moan. Go on, Harry. Higher than that. Good. The fur vanished. The fang shrank and he turned back into a man, simple, yet effective. And another villager remembered me forever as the hero who delivered them from the monthly terror of werewolf attacks. The bell rang and Lockhart got to his feet. Homework. Compose a poem about my defeat of the Waggle Waggle werewolf. Sign copies of Magical Need to the author of the best one. The class began to leave. Harry returned to the back of the room where Ron and Hermione were waiting. So this got me thinking about like Lockhart, and I want to talk more about Lockhart. Like, he's this like really prideful guy. He talks about like how he's achieved all this stuff. He's wrote all his books, and he has like a really charming smile or something. And it's like it's basically like I don't think a lot of what he says he did is actually real, and he's just so prideful, and I think that he's exaggerating a lot of the stuff that he says he did. But anyway, let's continue. The class began to leave. Harry returned to the back of the room where Ron and Hermione were waiting. Ready? Harry muttered. Wait till everyone's gone, said Hermione nervously. All right. She approached Lockhart's desk, a piece of paper clutched tightly in her hand, Harry and Ron right behind her. Professor Lockhart, Hermione stammered. I wanted to get this book out of the library, just for background reading. She held out the piece of paper, her hand shaking slightly. But the thing is, it's in the restricted section of the library, so I need a teacher to sign for it. I'm sure it would help me understand what you say in Gadding with Gals about slow-acting venoms. Ah, Gadding with Gals, said Lockhart, taking the note from Hermione and smiling widely at her. Possibly my very favorite book. You enjoyed it. Oh, yes, said Hermione eagerly. So clever. The way you trapped that last one with the tea strainer. Well, I'm sure no one will mind me giving the best student in the year a little extra help, said Lockhart warmly, and he pulled out an enormous peacock quill. Yes, nice, isn't it? He said, misreading the revolting look on Ron's face. I usually save it for book signings. He scrawled an enormous, loopy signature on the note and handed it back to Hermione. So, Harry, said Lockhart while Hermione folded the note with fumbling fingers and slipped it into her bag. Tomorrow's the first Quidditch match of the season, I believe. Gryffindor against Slytherin, is it not? I hear you're a useful player. I was a seeker too. I was asked to try for the national squad, but preferred to dedicate my life to the eradication of the dark forces. Still, if ever you feel the need for a little private training, don't hesitate to ask. Always happy to pass on my expertise to less able players. Harry made an indistinct noise in his throat and then hurried off after Ron and Hermione. I don't believe it, he said, as the three of them examined the signature on the note. He didn't even look at the book we wanted. That's because he's a brainless git, said Ron, but who cares? We've got what we needed. He is not a brainless git, said Hermione shrilly, as they half ran towards the library. Just because he said you were the best student in the year. So Hermione has like this, I think he has like this crush on one of the teachers, and she just doesn't do anything to upset him because she just needs his validation, I guess. They dropped their voices as they entered the muffled stillness of the library. Madame Pince, the librarian, was a thin, irritable woman who looked like an underfed vulture. Most potent potions, she repeated suspiciously, trying to take the note from Hermione, but Hermione wouldn't let go. I was wondering if I could keep it, she said breathlessly. Oh, come on, said Ron, wrenching it from her grasp and thrusting it at Madame Pince. We'll get you another autograph. Lockhart will sign anything if it stands still long enough. Madame Pince held the note up to the light as though determined to detect a forgery, but it passed the test. She stalked away between the lofty shelves and returned several minutes later, carrying a large and moldy-looking book. So this actually reminds me that I watched the movie and Lockhart ends up being one of the bad guys. So like I guess the reason why he gave them the signature is that he wants them to go into the Chamber of Secrets. So I guess the basilisk can kill Harry or something. But I'm just assuming that right now. Hermione put it carefully into her bag and they left, trying not to walk too quickly or look too guilty. 5 minutes later, they were barricaded in Moaning Myrtle's out-of-order bathroom once again. Hermione had overridden Ron's objections by pointing out that it was the last place anyone in their right minds would go, so they were guaranteed some privacy. Moaning Myrtle was crying noisily in her cubicle, but they were ignoring her, and she them. Hermione opened most potent potions carefully, and the three of them bent over the damp, spotted pages. It was clear from a glance why it belonged in the restricted section. Some of the potions had effects almost too gruesome to think about, and there were some very unpleasant illustrations, which included a man who seemed to have been turned inside out, and a witch sprouting several extra pairs of arms out of her head. Here it is, said Hermione excitedly, as she found the page headed the Polyjuice Potion. So I want to talk about the Polyjuice Potion. So it's like this potion that can make you turn into anyone you want, and you just need some kind of extraction from them, like a hair or saliva or something, and they're going to use it to get information out of Draco Malfoy. It was decorated with drawings of people halfway through transforming into other people. Harry sincerely hoped the artist had imagined looks of intense pain on their faces. "This is the most complicated potion I've ever seen," said Hermione as they scanned the recipe. "Lacewing flies, leeches, fluxweed, and knotgrass," she murmured, running her finger down the list of ingredients. I wish they would explain why they named these ingredients. Like for example, in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, they kind of explain why. For example, if a firefly is really perseverant in hot climates, then it makes a really good cold resistance elixir because of how warm it is and how because it's in warm climates, it gives you the ability to resist cold climates because of how warm it is. And so in this case, it doesn't give you any explanation as to the capabilities of these insects that give them these effects as an elixir. But anyway, she murmured, running her finger down the list of ingredients. "Well, they're easy enough. They're in the student store cupboard. We can help ourselves. Ooh, look, powdered horn of a bicorn. Don't know where we're going to get that. Shredded skin of boomslang. That'll be tricky too. And of course a bit of whoever we want to change into." "Excuse me," said Ron sharply. "What do you mean a bit of whoever we're changing into? I'm drinking nothing with crab's toenails in it." Hermione continued as though she hadn't heard him. "You don't have to worry about that yet, though, because we add those bits last." Ron turned speechless to Harry, who had another worry. "Do you realize how much we're going to have to steal, Hermione? Shredded skin of boomslang. That's definitely not in the students' cupboard. What are we going to do, break into Snape's private stores? I don't know if this is a good idea." Hermione shut the book with a snap. "Well, if you two are going to chicken out, fine," she said. There were bright pink patches on her cheeks and her eyes were brighter than usual. "I don't want to break rules, you know. I think threatening Muggleborns is far worse than brewing up a difficult potion. But if you don't want to find out if it's Malfoy, I'll go straight to Madam Pince now and hand the book back in." "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd be persuading us to break rules," said Ron. "All right, we'll do it. But not toenails, okay?" So I guess that they're trying to be different than the last book, because in the last book it was Ron and Harry that was breaking all the rules, walking around the corridors at midnight and stuff like that. And now it's Hermione trying to persuade them to break the rules. So they're trying to be different. And I guess it's showing a character arc for Hermione. She's becoming more of a risk taker. And she's getting out of her comfort zone more. And I guess that's good. "How long will it take to make anyway?" said Harry, as Hermione, looking happier, opened the book again. Well, as the fluxweed has got to be picked at the full moon, and the lace wings have got to be stewed for 21 days, I'd say it'd be ready in about a month. And if we can get all the ingredients. A month, said Ron. Malfoy could have attacked half the Muggleborns in the school by then. But Hermione's eyes narrowed dangerously again, and he added swiftly, but it's the best plan we've got, so full steam ahead, I say. However, while Hermione was checking that the coast was clear for them to leave the bathroom, Ron muttered to Harry, it'll be a lot less hassle if you can just knock Malfoy off his broom tomorrow. Harry woke early on Saturday morning and lay for a while thinking about the coming Quidditch match. He was nervous, mainly at the thought of what Wood would say if Gryffindor lost, but also at the idea of facing a team mounted on the fastest racing brooms gold could buy. Oh, I should tell you about how Malfoy's dad bought the Slytherin team a bunch of brooms, and he was like bragging about it, and Hermione was like, at least Gryffindor didn't have to buy their way in. They got in through pure talent. So Hermione obviously thinks that Slytherin's got no talent, and so they gotta buy these fancy brooms to win the game. But anyway, let's continue. He had never wanted to beat Slytherin so badly. After half an hour of lying there with his insides churning, he got up, dressed, and went down to breakfast early, where he found the rest of the Gryffindor team huddled at the long empty table, all looking uptight and not speaking much. As 11 o'clock approached, the whole school started to make its way down to the Quidditch stadium. It was a muggy sort of day with a hint of thunder in the air. Ron and Hermione came hurrying over to wish Harry good luck as he entered the changing rooms. The team pulled on their scarlet Gryffindor robes and sat down to listen to Wood's usual pre-match pep talk. Slytherin have better brooms than us, he began. No point denying it, but we've got better people on our brooms. We've trained harder than they have. We've been flying in all weathers. Too true, muttered George Weasley. I haven't been properly dry since August. And we're going to make them rue the day they let that little bit of slime Malfoy buy his way onto their team. Chest heaving with emotion, Wood turned to Harry. It'll be down to you, Harry, to show them that a secret has to be something more than a rich father. Has to have something more than a rich father. Get to that snitch before Malfoy, or die trying, Harry, because we've got to win today. We've got to. So no pressure, Harry, said Fred, winking at him. As they walked out onto the pitch, a roar of noise greeted them. Mainly cheers, because Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were anxious to see Slytherin beat. But the Slytherins in the crowd made their boos and hisses heard too. Madam Hooch, the Quidditch teacher, asked Flint and Wood to shake hands, which they did, giving each other threatening stares and gripping rather harder than was necessary. On my whistle, said Madam Hooch. 3, 2, 1. With a roar from the crowd to speed them upwards, the 14 players rose towards the leaden sky. Harry flew higher than any of them, squinting around for the snitch. All right there, Scarhead, yelled Malfoy, shooting underneath him as though to show off the speed of his broom. Harry had no time to reply. At that very moment, a heavy black bludger came pelting towards him. He avoided it so narrowly that he felt it ruffle his hair as it passed. Close one, Harry, said George, streaking past him with his club in his hand, ready to knock the bludger back towards the Slytherin. Harry saw George give the bludger a powerful whack in the direction of Adrian Bootsy, but the bludger changed direction in midair and shot straight for Harry again. Harry dropped quickly to avoid it, and George managed to hit it hard towards Malfoy. Once again, the bludger swerved like a boomerang and shot at Harry's head. So, I think I know what's happening. I think Dobby's trying to injure Harry so he can't try and get into the Chamber of Secrets. And he jinxed the bludger or something. Harry put on a burst of speed and zoomed towards the other end of the pitch. He could hear the bludger whistling along behind him. What was going on? Bludgers never concentrated on one player like this. It was their job to try and unseat as many people as possible. Fred Weasley was waiting for the bludger at the other end. Harry ducked as Fred swung at the bludger with all his might. The bludger was knocked off course. That does it. That's done it. Fred yelled happily, but he was wrong, as though it was magnetically attracted towards Harry. The bludger pelted after him once more, and Harry was forced to fly off at full speed. It had started to rain. Harry felt heavy drops fall onto his face, splattering onto his glasses. He didn't have a clue what was going on in the rest of the game until he heard Lee Jordan, who was commenting, saying Slytherin leads 60 points to 0. The Slytherin's superior brooms were clearly doing their jobs. And meanwhile, the mad bludger was doing all it could to knock Harry out of the air. Fred and George were now flying so close to him on either side that Harry could see nothing at all, except their flailing arms. He had no chance to look for the snitch, let alone catch it. Someone's tampered with this bludger, Fred grunted, swinging his bat with all his might at it as it launched a new attack on Harry. We need time out, said George, trying to signal to Wood and stop the bludger, breaking Harry's nose at the same time. Wood had obviously got the message. Madam Hooch's whistle rang out, and Harry, Fred, and George dived for the ground, still trying to avoid the mad bludger. What's going on? Said Wood, as the Gryffindor team huddled together while Slytherins in the crowd jeered. We're being flattened. Fred, George, where were you when that bludger stopped Angelina scoring? We were 20 feet above her, stopping the other bludger, murdering Harry, Oliver, said George angrily. Someone's fixed it. It won't leave Harry alone. It hasn't gone for anyone else all game. The Slytherins must have done something to it. But the bludgers have been locked in Madam Hooch's office since our last practice. There was nothing wrong with them then, said Wood anxiously. Madam Hooch was walking towards them. Over her shoulder, Harry could see the Slytherin team jeering and pointing in his direction. Listen, said Harry as she came nearer and nearer. With you two flying around me all the time, the only way I'm going to catch the snitch is if it flies up my sleeve. Go back to the rest of the team and let me deal with the rogue one. Don't be thick, said Fred. It'll take your head off. Wood was looking from Harry to the Weasleys. Oliver, this is mad, said Alicia Spinnet angrily. You can't let Harry deal with that thing on his own. Let's ask for an inquiry. If we stop now, we'll have to forfeit the match, said Harry, and we're not losing to Slytherin just because of a mad bludger. Come on, Oliver, tell them to leave me alone. This is all your fault, George said angrily to Wood. Get the snitch or die trying. What a stupid thing to tell him. Madam Hooch had joined them. Ready to resume play? She asked Wood. Wood looked at the determined look on Harry's face. "All right," he said. "Fred, George, you heard Harry. Leave him alone and let him deal with the bludger on his own." The rain was falling more heavily now. On Madame Hooch's whistle, Harry kicked hard into the air and heard the telltale whoosh of the bludger behind him. Higher and higher Harry climbed. He looped and swooped, spiraled, zigzagged, and rolled. Slightly dizzy, he nevertheless kept his eyes wide open. Rain was speckling his glasses and ran up his nostrils as he hung upside down, avoiding another fierce dive from the bludger. He could hear laughter from the crowd. He knew he must look very stupid, but the rogue bludger was heavy and couldn't change direction as quickly as he could. He began a kind of roller coaster ride around the edges of the stadium, squinting through the silver sheets of rain to the Gryffindor goalposts, where Adrian Pusey was trying to get past Wood. A whistling in Harry's ear told him the bludger had just missed him again. He turned right over and sped in the opposite direction. "Training for the ballet, Potter," yelled Malfoy, as Harry was forced to do a stupid kind of twirl in mid-air to dodge the bludger. Off Harry fled, the bludger trailing a few feet behind him, and then glaring back at Malfoy in hatred. He saw it. The golden snitch. It was hovering inches above Malfoy's left ear, and Malfoy, busy laughing at Harry, hadn't seen it. For an agonizing moment, Harry hung in midair, not daring to speed towards Malfoy in case he looked up and saw the snitch. Wham! He had stayed still a second too long. The bludger a second too long. The bludger had hit him at last.